Electrical Basics 101, and I talked about the voltage, current, resistance. We had a look at some protocols and Ohm's Law. That's what I'm going to talk about today, is Ohm's Law and why we need to know a little bit about it if we're going to do our boat wiring or DIY stuff. When I did my apprenticeship, way back in the 80s, I think it was probably one of the very first things that we ever learnt was Ohm's Law. There are a couple of little formulas that we had to do. One of them was Ohm's Law. And it basically gives us an idea of how voltage, current and resistance relate to each other within a circuit. But there are some limitations. So what we'll do is we'll talk about that right at the very end of the video. The intent is to probably try and understand the relationships between the voltage, the current and the resistance when we have a fixed value resistance. Okay, so let's get into it. So Ohm's Law. Ohm's Law is volts, V equals volts, I equals current in amps, and R equals our resistance. So now we take our little formula and we put it to use. So volts equals current times resistance, where the resistance is a fixed value. So in this case, we want to find our voltage. Typically we just go and get a voltmeter, right, and hang it across the terminals like I showed you in that other video. But we don't know what our voltage is, let's just say, you know. So basically what I've done here is I've used some very simple values. I've got 1 amp of current flow and I'm using a 12 ohm resistor. Okay, our load is 12 ohms. Now, I'm not very good at math, so I had to use something really simple, So what that shows us is when we apply Ohm's Law, we calculate a voltage. So 1 amp times 12 ohms equals 12 volts DC. So our voltage is 12 volts DC. There we go, we've got it. Now, I'm thinking that some of you guys are already starting to think, well, why would I want to know any of this stuff, like this electrical stuff? Well, basically, the reason that I'm going through this is one of the very first things that we do in an apprenticeship is learn the very, very basics, and this is the basics. So when it comes to the time where we have to do some fault finding or try and work out what's going on within a circuit, we've got to have a bit of an understanding of the relationship between these items. So that's why, guys. I hope that helps, and yeah, keep watching.